Right. So yeah, first things first, we're going to do some revision of that one thing that was in the test that I didn't teach you guys. Shame, I felt quite bad. It was only one question though. It was question 19, I think, and it was broken anyway. Or was it 17? I forget. It doesn't really matter. It's a question about how to access a web service from a client's application. It's not particularly difficult, and it takes a while to teach, which is why we sort of skipped over it. But today, the lecture might be a little bit more laid back later on, because you guys have actually, I was going through the knowledge assessments at the end of chapter 5, you know, seeing like what kind of questions we would have to answer, you guys would have to be able to answer by the end. And I was just going like, oh wait, you guys know about half of these already. So chapter 5 will probably be quite laid back for us. So I figured we would use a little bit of the time to figure out this one last bit of chapter 4. So I set up a web service exactly like we had before. So I mean, it's literally just 2 C# methods, you know, standard C# methods. They're both marked as web methods, and they're both in a class that is marked as a web service. So just to make sure that it's working, because I just programmed this up now. So let me just make sure. So going to view it in the browser. It'll take a little while, I think. Okay, so here it is. There's just 2 methods. The one is factorial, which you guys have already seen before, lots since chapter 1. So you give it your integer n, you hit invoke, and it gives you back whatever the factorial of that number is, right? So that one's hopefully pretty okay, and it does that with that recursive algorithm that we learned a while back. The other one is even simpler than that. You give it an integer a, so whatever number, and it'll just give you back a times a, okay? So a squared, or a to the power of 2 or whatever. And that method is called power 2. Okay. And they're in a web server, so yeah, they're just marked web methods, and they're the 2 methods are for your interest. So what we want to do, as we did kind of discuss it last week, or not last week, the week we learned web services, where you can see that this doesn't look great, right? Ideally, you would want to be able to customize this, right? When you click on factorial, it gives you all of this stuff, right? Like you don't want to actually have to see this. This must just happen in the background. You know, all of this can go away. You would want to be able to change the title. You would want to be able to customize it like we customize any other web application that we've created, right? Like with CSS and HTML and all of that good stuff. So what I'm just going to show you is how you can set up another application that makes use of any web service that you've created. Okay, and that was what's on page 112. That's what that one question in the test was about. And yeah, that's what we'll learn now. So to start off with, it's quite easy. We're just going to have to create a new project, obviously. So I'm going to create a new project. It's just going to be a standard ASP.NET web application, and I'm going to hit next. And I'll call this our, I forgot what I called the original project. Whatever, this will be our web clients. Okay, so it's the client that's the client's application that will be accessing the web service. Okay, and I'm just going to hit create. And yeah, it'll be an empty web application. And that's that. So that created it. And then, so what you have to do in order to be able to access this web service from the web clients, what we need to do in the web clients is add what's actually, I can ask you guys this to wake us up after a shorter school day, I'm told. How do I access, how would you allow access from a client's application to a web service? Do you guys remember what it's called? From you kind of self-studied it in the test last week. If I'm in a client's application, what do I have to add to that client's application for it to be able to access a web service? What's it called? Should I give you that hint I gave you guys in the test again? Check out page 112 of your textbooks if you don't know. Okay, seems like we've got silence. So I'll tell you, in order to access a web service from a client's application, you have to add what's called a web reference, a web reference. Okay, so it's quite easy to add a web reference. You just click add service reference. So it's a reference to a service. Obviously, not all services are web services. Well, not obviously. We learn about some other services at the end of chapter 5. But yeah, there are other services other than web services. We want to add a web service. So we click advanced. We say add web reference. Okay, so we're adding a web reference. Then here it'll ask you for a URL. You see, now this could be a URL to any web service in the whole world. Obviously, we just care about our web service. So I'm just going to copy this URL over here that I'm accessing in my browser to get access to this web service. I'm just going to paste it into the URL bar, click next, and you can see that it gives me the web service. Okay, and I'll call this the yeah, I'll call it Crawford or just Craw reference, just so it's easier to type. Okay, and I'm just going to hit add reference. Okay, and then it'll go ahead and add the reference here. So you can see it says web reference, Craw reference. And all that's doing is basically going and fetching the web service. Oh, you did answer, Adam. That's cool. Oh, wait, but you did kind of answer after I said it on the mic. I didn't notice when you did. I was focused on creating the web reference. Okay, cool. So all this did was kind of fetched the web service and made it a class that is accessible inside the client's application. So basically now this Craw reference thing is a class inside our application. Exactly, and we can use it exactly like any other class. And it is a class in the first place, right? The web service is literally just a class. It's just that we're now able to access that class from our web clients, from our client's application. Okay, so that's all that did. And you'll see it's exactly like using a normal class. In fact, this is basically all it is, but I'm just going to show you the full example. So what I'm going to do is just set up like a home page, a standard HTML, a standard form, a web form. And from that, we're just going to use one of the web services that we've created, like either Power 2 or Factorial or both, I guess. Doesn't necessarily matter too much which one we use. I'll just get it out of the way because it's quite, yeah, we want to get started on chapter 5, I'm sure. So I'm just going to add a web form. I'll just call it like defaults because that's what they call it in the example. So I'll just call it default.aspx and I'm just going to hit add. Cool. So this is just a standard HTML form. It's like nothing special. And okay, just to show you guys, so you can see on our web service page, it's got all of this other nonsense everywhere, right? But all you actually need is the text box where you type the thing, the button that you click, and then some place to display the results. In a way, it's very similar to the JavaScript calculator that we created, right? You just needed a place to type the number, a place like a button to click to like add the numbers together or whatever, and a place to display it, like a paragraph tag, but on ASP.NET they're called label tags, okay? But it's not anything new. You guys have seen this stuff before. So all I'm going to do is add, those things. So I'm going to add a text box in which to type what we care about. So I'm going to say ASP text box. We have to give this an ID, obviously. So I'm going to say ID equals text box 1 because that's the standard way that they use in your textbooks. And then we'll say run at equals server. Ooh, run at equals server. I need a new keyboard. And yeah, actually, no, I'm not going to put any default text because it's very silly how Microsoft Edge handles default text. You actually have to backspace it. How silly is that? Anyway, so I'm not going to put any default text in the text box. It's just going to be an empty text box. And then I'm going to say, cool. So the next thing we need is a button that you can click. Okay, so ASP button, ID equals button 1. Run at server because it needs to be used on the server, which in this case is just my desktop, but You can use your imagination. And it's just going to say invoke on the button to like invoke the web service. And then the big part of the button is obviously that it needs some kind of method, right? We need to say onClick equals and then the name of the method that we'll put on the server. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'm just going to say onClick equals, I don't know why it's not auto completing. That's not nice. OnClick equals button1 underscore click. Okay, so when you click the button, it's going to call this method button1 underscore click, which we haven't yet defined, but we will go ahead and define it just now. All right, and then the last thing we need is just a label tag at which to display the result after it's called the web service. So this is just going to be ID equals label1, run at server. I don't think it needs the run at server, but hey, better safe than sorry. And text equals results will show here or something. Okay, or response would probably be better, but that's cool. All right. So that's that. I'm just going to go ahead and create, it's going to complain that button1 underscore click doesn't exist if I try to run this now. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up default ASPX, and over here, I'm just going to define protected void button1 underscore click. So I'm just going to define the event that will be run when the button is clicked. Okay, and for now, actually, I'll just to make sure that this method is running, I'll just set, when you click this button, I'll set label1.text to button clicked. Okay, for now. Obviously, we're going to want to raise the web service when we do it properly, but for now, that's okay. All right. So I'm going to right-click, build solution. It's going to build the solution, and then we're going to view this simple web page, which will just be a button, a text box, and a label. Okay, so I'm going to say view in browser. Okay, seems like everyone's here, or maybe 2 people absent. Oh, I should have put some line breaks here. Okay, well, it's not the prettiest of things, but you can see, and when I click invoke, the label should change to button clicked, and it does. Okay, so success. Again, it could look prettier, and you guys know how to make it prettier, right? If you guys wanted to style this, how would you style it, guys? What would we use to style it? Can someone post that in the chat while I... Exactly. Okay, cool. You guys are pretty on point with most of this stuff, it seems. We must just, okay, I'm just going to add these line breaks quick, just so that it's not totally devoid of some styling. Cool. And now the main part of this, we want to use the web reference in our web application. So we created that web service that has factorial and power 2, and we just want to go ahead and use it. Now, as I told you, it's added literally just as another class. Okay, so you can literally just use it as a class. So in order to do that, you have to create an object, right? You have to instantiate the class, right? Like we always have to do when using, I don't know, stack, my stack equals new stack, queue, my queue equals new queue, rectangle, rect1 equals new rectangle. All of these are just objects, exactly like this one. And yeah, so I'll say var web service. By the way, var is just a type that you can use when you're lazy, when it's holding some kind of complex object. And the crawl reference dot web service 1, but you can see here the web service was called web service 1. I should have put a more creative name, admittedly, but that's fine. And you can see, so all I've done here is create an object of type crawl reference dot web service 1. Okay, so crawl reference was the web reference that we just created, and dot web service 1 is the web service that's on the server. Okay, it's on the server. And that's that, actually. And now you can just use it as if it's local. So I'm going to say label1.text equals, all right, so there's going to be some problems with types here, because, so the text box, what type do you think I'll get from the text box, guys? What type am I going to get from the text box? What data type? If I take, exactly, it's going to be a string. Okay, cool. Both of you got it. That's cool. So it's going to be a string, but obviously our methods expect integers. Does anyone remember? I know I did show it to you guys very briefly, but it's not testable, so we didn't spend too much time on it. But do you guys know how I can convert a string to an integer? Or at least, I don't know, like, do you remember the, it's a difficult question. I don't know if anyone remembers parse. So parse was how we did it in JavaScript. And you know what? I'm going to take it. Wow. Okay, Maya, very close. Maya, very close. It's not parse 2 in 32, though. It's going to be convert.2 in 32. But that, yeah, cool. I'm very happy that you guys even answered something, so that's cool. So power 2 and factorial obviously expect integers. Our text box is going to give us a string. So what I'm going to do is say convert.2 in 32, convert.2 in 32, and I'm going to say textbox1.text. So that's just going to go ahead and get the text from textbox1. But now the other problem, so web service.power2 returns an integer, right? And obviously label1.text wants to be set to a string, okay? Now in C# to convert anything, like any integer, or actually, I think it works with any type, actually, pretty much any type, assuming it has like a special method defined in it. But you'll see more of this in chapter 5, because we'll use it like soon, actually. But you can just say .toString, okay, .toString. And that'll just convert whatever this is into a string, okay, to a string. So .toString. So yeah, a little bit of trouble with types there because it returns an integer and it expects an integer, but we were giving it a string. So yeah. Anyway, though, that will work now. When you click the button, it is going to take whatever you have typed into the text box. It's going to give it to .power2, and it'll set label1.text to the response. So let's hope that that works. I'm going to hit build solution. I'm going to open up, actually, I think I can just refresh the page. Okay, let me just open it up again. Cool. So you type something, 9, you hit invoke, and we get 81. Okay. And in order to use factorial instead of power2, it's as simple as changing web service.power2 to web service.factorial. Okay. So both of the methods inside the web service are accessible through this web reference that we created. Okay. So we have to build it again. Okay. This is the problem of not using interpreted languages. Gets a bit finicky. But this is okay. So then we say 9, invoke, and you can see it gives us 362,880. Okay, cool. So that's the last bit of chapter 4 that I didn't show you guys. You can see it takes a while to teach, but it's actually very simple. The main thing about all of this is if you want to access a web service through let me just mute my phone quickly. If you want to access a web service through a client's application, you have to add a web reference to the client's application. So that's just what I was showing you. And then obviously you can customize that how you like. And that brings us firmly to the end of chapter 4. And so now it is on to chapter 5, which is quite cool. I like chapter 5 actually, partially just because I think you guys are gonna probably take to it quite easily because we've learned a lot of the things that you need for chapter 5 already. But chapter 5 is on Windows forms. Now that makes it sound weird because, you know, what's a Windows form? But really they're just desktop applications. Okay, so like we've worked with web applications. So we learned how to program. We learned how like general programming best practices at the beginning of chapter 3. We learned about object-oriented programming. We learned about web applications. And the other side of that, just so you guys have, you know, good scope, would be how to develop desktop applications. So desktop applications, I'm sure you guys know, Steam is a desktop application. You know, Visual Studio, all of your browsers. You guys know what desktop applications are, right? Hopefully we're okay with that. Word and Excel, all of that type of stuff. Okay, so Windows Forms are just desktop applications that display one or more visual interfaces. Okay, we'll discuss what we mean by visual interfaces in a little bit, but just to, you know, to get you thinking, I put it there already. All right. Yeah, GUI, exactly, Adam, yeah. And in fact, that's the next thing that we're discussing now. So visual interface, yeah, so visual interface is kind of how they say graphical user interface inside C# or .NET. and just Visual Studio. In like Microsoft generally, they use the term visual interface instead of GUI. If you guys just want to think about it in terms of graphical user interface, then yeah, that works 100%. And then there's also like a textual user interface, which we'll discuss a little bit as well. So there's GUI, like visual interfaces and graphical interfaces, and there's TUI, textual interfaces. Okay. So what do we mean by this? So if you are creating a desktop application that has a visual interface, you will use what is called a Windows form if you're creating it for Windows. Obviously, if you're not creating it for Windows, then you're not going to be using a Windows form. And then if you're creating a TUI, again, on Windows, so, or, well, yeah, okay, we'll get into that a little bit. But if you're creating a TUI, so just a textual interface, by the way, what we mean by that, guys, so if I open CMD quickly, like if you're creating an application that is just used here, right? Like if we say chador somewhere, so like chador is to change into a specific directory. So like programming up this, like this system that allows me to chador, that little simple program, that would be something that is an application that's programmed in a TUI, a textual user interface. Okay, now again, TUIs, to people who don't use computers frequently, a TUI is pretty like abstract, like who actually uses this? But you'll see that, you know, you can do some interesting stuff with them. Okay, we'll experiment with them a little bit again before the end of the lecture. Okay, so we've got TUI and GUI. So we've got these two things. If we're using GUI, then we create Windows forms. If we're using TUI, we create console-based applications. Okay, console-based applications. So console is this like command prompt. The console is like that command prompt section. Okay. And what's cool about these is they integrate with the operating system, because one question that you'd often get, I think the reason I put that on the slide, one question that you'll often get is, why don't we just make everything web applications? Well, because you can imagine, right, you want something that can interface more directly with the operating system that the user is using, right? It makes things slightly more smoother, or slightly smoother, more smoother. And yeah, it just improves things. You guys know this from personal experience, right? Like often the web application is slightly slower or just doesn't have as many features because it's just more difficult to create in that setting, okay? They can also run without access to the internet, which is a big thing, right? You're not always going to be connected to the internet. You don't always want to be connected to the internet, and you still want to be able to actually do things with your computer. So that's the other cool thing about desktop applications. Okay, the other thing to remember is that they can communicate with devices such as printers and scanners. Websites can do this as well. Back when the MTA was created, it was much more difficult to get websites to integrate, to interface with those kinds of things due to like driver compatibility and stuff. Nowadays it is possible, but yeah, historically, these would be the only way to really do it. Okay, so printers and scanners, that's a good thing about Windows Forms is that they'll pretty much automatically be able to be compatible with those things. But what's cool, and as I was telling you guys earlier, is that you actually already know a lot of this chapter. And it might sound like a new thing because we haven't really worked with desktop applications directly. But I actually took some of the questions in the knowledge assessments at the end of this chapter, I actually took them and I put them into the slide. And I want you guys to actually, you know, answer them. So here's one question. Again, this is something you're technically only supposed to know by the end of chapter 5. But I think you guys will probably be able to answer it now. So the question is, you are developing a Windows form application that responds to mouse events. Okay, so movements or clicks of the mouse, whatever. When the mouse moves, you need to invoke the method form1_handle_mouse. Okay, so there's a method called form1_handle_mouse, and we need to invoke it when the mouse moves. Any code that you write should not affect any existing event handling code. What statement should you use to attach the event handler to the event? Okay, so there are your 4 options. I'll give you guys some time, but if you could, then please tell me what's the answer? D, cool. I think we've got a consensus of 2 at least, and hopefully, yeah. That's correct, it's D. So again, you guys already kind of know this. It's very similar, right? Events are events are events. So whether we were using them in web applications, in OOP, in this, it's always the same. Okay, they're events. Cool. So that was the first one, but that's not the only one that I think you guys already know the answer to. So this one's slightly more abstract, but I think you guys should be able to get it. You might have to think a little bit on this one though. So the question is, you are extending an existing Windows application. Okay, so there's a Windows application, we're extending it. You would like to create a new form. So a new form is like another application that derives its visual characteristics from a previously created form. Which technique should you use to create the new form? And there are your 4 options. So which technique would we use to... So will you post the answers for the revision? Ah, yes. Okay, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I've got them all noted down in my book. I just have to type them up. I'll probably just post them in a long WhatsApp message. Cool. So Adam says A. Yeah, no problem. I did promise to do it. Thank you for reminding me. I just forgot. Okay, so Adam says A. I'm going to take it that the whole class agrees it's A, and that's correct. And you guys can see, so this word visual here, we don't quite understand what that's referring to yet, right? We haven't really discussed visual, but you can see we've got these ideas of inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, and abstraction. You guys learned all of these ideas back in chapter 2. Or were scared by all of these ideas back in chapter 2, either one. But the point is, you can see that this is probably inheritance. Why? Because it says derives visual characteristics. If it said slightly modify visual characteristics, then it might be like polymorphism. Or if it says protect or hide away or something like that, visual characteristics, you might say encapsulation, right? In fact, the only thing that matters is visual inheritance. These other 3 are kind of irrelevant, but the point is that, yeah, you guys get it. And that's not the only one you should know. There is another. So another question that you should know at the end of chapter 5, you are developing an application that will be run from the command line. Okay, that will be run from the command line. Which of the following methods would you use for, did I copy this exactly or okay. Forgive the grammar. It's supposed to say, which of the following methods would you use to output to the command line, okay? Or I have 4 output to the command, I don't know. Okay, that's clearly wrong there. Okay, it says, so which of the following commands would I use to output something to the command line? B, exactly, okay, cool. Oh, wait, yes, it's supposed to be B. Geesh, okay, I ignore this one. It is supposed to be B. Yes, to output something to the command line. Let me just double check the question in the book because I was supposed to copy it exactly and apparently I didn't. You are developing, use for output to the command line. And I even have console.write circled in my book. Let me just change this before I confuse some other poor people. There we go. Okay, apparently, there we go. Cool. Nicely done, guys. Point is, okay, that's supposed to be hidden as well. All right. Anyway, let me just get everything on my screen. Oh, okay. I was trying to do some fancy animation. All right. How exciting you guys get to watch me customize the slides while you learn from them. It's more interactive this way, don't you think? When you get to correct the slides. Anyway, okay, so how do we actually create a Windows form? So it's actually very easy. It's quite fun as well. So we'll just make a simple one. So we use the Windows Form Designer. Again, remember the keywords, guys. The words that are highlighted in bold are things that you may very well be asked, okay? So we use what's called the Windows Form Designer to create these desktop applications. Visual Studio provides drag and drop. Okay, so it's almost like using WordPress or one of those nice, web development things that are out now, where you can literally just drag things onto the screen and it basically just works. So yeah, it's quite a cool thing, and it makes it quite easy. So we use drag and drop in the Windows Form Designer. You can also type it, but why would you do that to yourself? The form will respond to user inputs and actions, which we call events, and you guys already know that. So when the user does certain things, we'll call or raise specific events. And yeah, and that's a structure that you guys should be okay with. So to start with, actually, I'm just going to show you an example of creating a Windows form, just so that it doesn't stay abstract for too long. So we're going to go ahead. We're done with chapter 4 now, so I'm going to close this, and then we'll just move on to new project. So new project, we're creating a Windows Forms app in C#. So you could find it somewhere on this list if you have a fresh installation of Visual Studio. Just hit next. I'll call this Crawford app, I suppose, Crawford app. And I'll call it Crawford 5 for chapter 5. Create a new solution, add a noise place, cool, that all seems fine. So that'll go ahead and create, oh, well, that was quick. Cool, so that's a Windows form, all right? And yeah, so that's what it looks like, and you can customize this, of course, and you can kind of see already that it does bear resemblance to some of the apps that we frequently use. Obviously, you can customize the styling and stuff a lot, but some things that would be programmed in this way would be like the Windows calculator, this thing here, all of the apps that you're using on your Windows computer, Steam, Epic Games, Zoom, whatever. Okay, they'll all be created in this way. Obviously, those take very long to create and they take big teams, but we'll create our own simple app now. So our app is just going to have 2 things, and you'll see how easy it is to add those 2 things to our app. We're going to make an app where you can select a date and it tells you the date that you selected. Very exciting. But you can imagine that this would be like a starting point for selecting a date in like a Zoom chat, right? To schedule a meeting or something like that. All right. So you can, oh, by the way, take notes because this will come up later. Do you see the size of the Windows form currently? So I can adjust the size of the Windows form like so, right? However I wanted. Take notes, it was like this size when I initially created it, right? So by default, that was the size of a Windows form app. I'm going to make it like this size, just to illustrate a point for later. Okay, so it's going to be a tiny, tiny Windows form like that. Okay. And it's just going to have a thing that you can select a date in. So I clicked on toolbox and I'm just dragging what's called a date time picker onto the thing. And there we go. You'll now be able to select a date in this date time picker. I'm also going to drag over a label. Okay, a label, it's exactly like the labels in ASP.NET. It's basically just a paragraph tag. Okay, basically an HTML paragraph tag is all that these labels are. Why does it have to have a Windows 7 design? I don't know. These are the questions that you should pose to Microsoft. Yeah, you're right. It does have a Windows 7 design. This even looks a bit like Windows XP. I imagine you can customize your default settings or something if you wanted. So you can open up properties. You can't like change the color and stuff quite easily though, because you can see. So on the right here, we have all the properties. Now guys, they call them properties. You know why they call them properties, right? Because the label 1 is just a class. You see it's a class, system.windows.forms.label. It's a class. And inside a class, we have properties. So these are all of the properties that exist inside the windows.forms.label class. Okay, so you can just modify these properties. So if I change the text of the label to like date will show here, date will show here, you can see then it modifies the text of the label. Okay, so and you can modify all of these properties. There's size, there's margins, color, all of these kinds of things. They're very standard. Hopefully we don't have to spend too much time discussing those. Okay, but as you can see, it's drag and drop. Unfortunately, as Tanya points out, it is in Windows 7 design, but what can we do? Okay, cool. So then you can link certain things to certain events, which actually, you know what? I'm going to demonstrate that to you after I demonstrate the next thing. This is the order that they go in your book. But I think for the convenience of our example, we're going to jump over to understand inheritance, and then we're going to come back and understand events. Okay, so we'll come back to this. So as I just mentioned, the label is just a class, right? And in fact, the entire form is a class. So I can show you that as well. So the entire form, if I hit properties, you can see it's system.windows.forms.form. Okay, so the entire form is just a class, and it has a bunch of properties, as all classes do, right? It has properties, it has methods, it has all of that kind of thing. Okay, which means anything that has classes and objects in C#, right? It has object-oriented programming. It's object-oriented programming, which means inheritance, encapsulation, polymorphism, all of these ideas are defined. Okay, they are defined. So you can see, so Windows forms are just classes, which means they can be inherited, they can be extended, they can do all of the normal stuff that classes can do. Okay, so you can see we've got public partial class. So and the inheritance works exactly the same way as all of the other ideas that we've seen. So like this is in Crawford app. Crawford app.form1 is defined. Crawford app.form1. And if I just say we create form2 that inherits from form1, in fact, I'm just going to show you guys. So we can say add new item. I think it actually can even do it for you automatically rather than typing it ourselves. Inherited form, Windows form. Okay, so I'm going to add an inherited form called form2. We have to build our app first, of course, or then it doesn't know what's going on. So it's building our standard little app quick. Okay, it finished building. I'll run it. So I'm going to run it just to show you guys what it'll do. I don't think it'll be surprising. Ooh, look at that. You see that, Tanya? So it automatically took on the design of Windows 10. That's cool. So it has reverse compatibility. It'll also be able to work on Windows 7 and Windows 8 and all of the other stuff. That's legit, actually. If you want to add functions to buttons and stuff, is there a source? Yeah, we'll see that in a bit, Adam, when we start working with the events. 100%, there is. And in fact, there are certain things that I'm just going to do in the source code instead, because it's a bit easier than going through that whole list of properties. But anyway, so you can see it's got a standard design, and you can like do all of the stuff with it. We haven't programmed any of the events yet, which we'll get to. But for now, that's what our form looks like. And it's pretty cool. So it automatically took on the design of thingy. That's nice. Okay, great stuff. Didn't think of that, actually. So cool. So we have form 1. What we want to do now is inherit from it. Okay, so we want to inherit from form 1 into form 2. So that we don't have to redefine the size, we don't have to redefine the date picker or the label or any of that stuff. It's already all defined. I just want to use it in another form now. So what I'm going to do is say add new item, inherited form. Oh, it doesn't autocomplete. There we go. Inherited form. And then I'm going to hit add, and it's going to ask me, which form do you want to inherit from? I want to inherit from form 1. I'm going to click OK. And there, created form 2. Now, if we go into the CS code of form 2. Let's just find it quickly. Where would it be? Okay. Ooh. So guys, immediately notice, I told you to take notes of the size. And you can see that when I created form 2, by default, it had the size of form 1, right? It had the size of form 1. Likewise, when I created, it also had the text of form 1. It already had the label and the date time picker, all of the standard stuff that we added to form 1, and also even the title of form 1. So it inherited absolutely everything from form 1. Okay. I do just want to find where I do remember seeing. So you can see here, it says public partial class form 2 inherits from Crawford app.form1. Okay, so it is literally identical to the idea of inheritance that we had back in OOP. Okay, it's defined by the exact same thing. You put the colon there, and there it is. All right. So yeah, that's that first bit. But now we actually, so that's the idea of visual inheritance. Why do we call it visual inheritance now? Because you can agree it's not necessarily totally intuitive that all of this visual information would be inherited, right? If you change the color of the form to red, that will be inherited as well. If you change the size, that's inherited. All of the things that you drag and drop onto it, it's obvious that those would be inherited. But the idea that all of the visual design elements would be inherited is not perfectly, it's not obvious, okay? I mean, in a way, it is a bit obvious because they are just properties, but look, Microsoft named the stuff. Okay, so I mean, it's useful to emphasize the fact that this inheritance also applies to the visual aspects, the design elements. Okay. So yeah, inherited / derived forms still inherit all of the properties and attributes and methods. Okay, so this includes everything. It includes all of the visuals, so the color, the size, the location of all of the controls, the functionality itself, so any events and methods that you define are also inherited. But yeah, to emphasize that everything is included, they include visual. Okay, so it's visual inheritance. All right. So with that covered, now we're going to customize our derived form. We're going to customize our derived form a little bit to make it so that it also has, extra functionality. So we're going to customize these events. Now there is quite a cool thing that you can do. So if you want to bind to a specific event, you can literally just double click whatever is in the form. Okay, actually, just to make it clear that we are working on form 2 here. So you can see I'm in the tab form 2, but it inherited the title of form 1. I'm actually going to change the property in form 2, the text property, to derived form or something. Derived form. There you go. Okay, so this is our derived form, just to emphasize it. Okay. So what's cool is you can literally just double click whatever it is. So I'm going to double click the datetime picker to bind something to that event. So I'm just going to double click it. And hopefully it would work. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be. Why isn't that working? View. Okay, I'll just say view code. All right, I guess we're going to have to unfortunately bind to the event ourselves. Huh, that's very strange. Is it because I'm running something? Huh, it worked in the original. This is weird. Anyway, oh, let's see. So is it not allowing me to extend because, that's weird. Okay, so notice I double clicked it and it is allowing me to edit the event. All right. For some reason, the same is not working in form 2. Can you use abstract form object that others derive from, but that can't actually be implemented by itself? That can't be run by itself. Yes, you can. So you can see here, here I say new form 1. So that means that I'm spawning form 1, okay? But if I wanted to run form 2 instead, so now, let me show you this. So you can see this is creating an object of type form 1. If you make it abstract, then you just wouldn't be able, so when I click run, even though I inherited from form 1, oh, there are build errors because I think we didn't, let me just remove this. Live demonstrations are always so great, aren't they? Okay, there we go. Cool, so you can see it's running form 1 currently, even though I inherited from form 1. If I marked it as abstract, then I wouldn't be able to run form 1 directly, but I could still change to form 2 here and run form 2. So all of the standard concepts of inheritance that apply in, so you see now I'm running derived form. So all of the standard concepts that apply to object-oriented programming still apply in this case. It's still OOP. They're all still C# classes. And you can see they are. So anything that your intuition suggests should apply to C# classes still apply here. Now, I want to create this event quickly. So let's just do it in form 1. Oh, I locked that to the taskbar. So I'm going to double click here in form 1. I commented out now that line. Let me just do it. Okay. So when I double clicked, what it did, so it is hiding it from us, but as Adam asked earlier, you could do this yourself. And we actually will, just so that I can show you that this is no different from when we were working with events before. So you can see that here it says this, okay, so this dot date time picker 1. So that's the date time picker that I dragged into the thing, obviously. Dot value changed plus equals new system dot events handler this dot date time picker. Okay. Ignore the system.event handler for now. I'll explain what's happening there now. It's because we're not explicitly creating a delegate. But the main thing is that you can see we just added the event, right? This, I mean the method. So this dot datetime picker 1 underscore value changed. If I go over to the code, you can see that this is the name of this event, right? Private void datetime picker 1 underscore value changed. Ooh, there was, now I know why it's not allowing me to do it. Okay. Guys, I now know why form 1, because I wasn't thinking. I skipped a step. Actually, you guys can tell me this. This is quite cool. This is a learning experience. This shows that I must be more careful when creating this, because I think I was rushing a little bit. Looking at this last line here, where I create datetime picker 1 and label 1. What do you guys think is the problem? Why am I not being allowed to modify datetime picker 1's event inside form 2? Look at how it's declared on these last 2 lines. It's private. Okay, so what do you guys think I should change it to? Protected, exactly, because then if it's protected, it'll be modifiable inside form 2 as well. Okay, I wasn't thinking about it. That's why when I was double clicking it in form 2, it wasn't allowing me to modify it. Disaster averted, hopefully. I think I'll probably need to rebuild the application, or maybe, okay, so you see now I can double click it in form 2 and change the code. So you see, guys, that even for me, I'm like, wow, that's cool. So yeah, encapsulation, that was visual encapsulation right there. What we just saw was visual encapsulation. Okay. I don't know why I forgot that, because I did actually, it might not seem like it, but I did actually prepare this example. So, or prepared to show this example, but I forgot about changing that to protected. So sorry about that. Okay, cool. But now I'm modifying this datetime picker 1 underscore value changed. And all I'm going to do is when you pick a date, it's just going to set the label to that date. Okay, so it's going to say label 1 is the ID of the label. It's just going to change the text to whatever is in datetime picker 1. So datetime picker 1 dot value dot toString. Okay, although they do have a nicer format. Let me just check in your book. It's on page 125. Dot toLong date string. Okay, dot toLong date string. So you can't say dot toString, but toLong date string just makes it look a little bit nicer. Okay, there you go. So when you now pick a date inside form 2, not inside form 1, because I only modified form 2's event. When you pick a date inside form 2, it's going to change this text from date we'll show here to the date itself. Okay, so you see 25th of September, that'll be our next lecture. 26th, 2nd of October, that'll be our lecture after that. We should hopefully be finished chapter 5 by then. But yeah, cool. So that's what that does. And you can, again, this is a standard C# method. In fact, let's do something fun, because I did have something to tell you guys at the end of the lecture as well. Okay, so I'll just do it. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to add an if statement here, just to, we're adding some little functionality to our Windows Forms app. I'm going to say if datetime picker 1 dot to date string equals 25th of September 2020. And in the else statement, so if it's not that date, then we're just going to set it to the date. And if it is, then we're going to set label1.text to label1.text to my birthday we might miss next week. Okay. Currently, the plan is to still have a lecture next week, but just to inform you guys. Okay. And also, don't forget to wish me if we do have a lecture. We're having like a joint party thing on Thursday, so I can't make any promises. Cool. So now when you select the 25th of September, it displays that little message in label 1, but otherwise it'll display something else. Okay. It'll just display the date that you selected. Shameless plug, indeed. So cool. We've got form 1, we've got form 2, we've learned about visual inheritance, we've learned how to bind to an event. The one other thing I wanted to show you, and then we'll take a break because I have used too much of your time. Sorry about that. We will take a break now. The last thing I wanted to show you is that this is just a normal method. Okay, this is just a normal method. So let me just show you. So this is exactly how we were adding things to, it's because that was in form 2.designer.cs. Let me jump over to form 1, initialize component. There it is. Should be somewhere here. This dot time picker, value changed, plus equals. So it's that. Okay. So let me just modify this a little bit just to show you guys. Okay, still in form. I'm just going to close some of these because it's getting a little bit difficult for me to follow what files we're working in. Okay. So just to show you that this is exactly how we were working with events earlier, and these events are implemented in the exact same way. You can see that this complicated structure, this is just handling for special cases where you're modifying outside of what the delegate is defining, okay? So the delegate defines object sender events args E and that it's a void. So if you're using that structure, you can literally just say, so I'm just going to change it. So currently it's date time picker 1 underscore value changed. I'm going to change it to on value changed. Okay, on value changed. All right. Now you can see immediately I changed it from on value changed. You can see it now highlights this because it's like, I don't recognize this method name. Where is this? Okay. I can literally remove all of this and just change to plus equals on value changed, like we did with our events back in chapter 2. Okay, like when we were doing that YouTube upload video app. So it's now, this is exactly what you guys see as that's how you add to an event, right? Just plus equals on value changed. And you guys will see if I build this and start it, things should still work. And you see they still do. Okay, they still work. All right. So yeah, very, very standard. You guys know what this is doing. It's exactly the same as the events we created. They have some funny format with that new system.events handler. But that's not too bad. There is a special word. Okay, I'll tell you about it when we come back because I've used too much of your time now. So we'll take like a 5-6 minute break till 4. You guys can go get some water and relax a bit. And then we'll come back and finish off this little bit. I'm surprised. I thought we would finish today early. I think we might finish next week early then if we maybe don't do console-based applications today. I don't know. We'll see. That's something I should do with this time. Let's finish off the register. Cool. Let's get going again. So wait, there was one thing I wanted to show you guys before you went. Oh, right. So yeah, it's just a new terminology. It's sort of, it's almost C# marketing, to be honest. But they are sort of explaining why you have to use plus equals when you add events, when you add to an event list. And I mean, you guys know why. It's because we can add multiple methods, right? So if we said equals, then any other methods that we added to this event would not work, right? You would be overwriting all of these previous methods. So the reason why they use plus equals is because it's almost like one delegate can reference multiple methods, right? Because you're allowed to call all of those methods, even though you've only defined that one delegate. And what they call that is multicast delegates, okay? Multicast delegates. So again, it's just new terminology. It's not a new idea. You guys already know this idea. I'm just, pointing out that this is what they're called, because you can be asked this. It was one weird question at the end of chapter 4 in the knowledge assessment that I'm just prepping you guys for with that one, basically. Multicast delegates can be bound to more than one method, allowing one-to-many notifications when they're fired. So one-to-many, that is to say we have one event, so datetime picker one dot value changed, but I can add as many events as I want, or as many methods to this one event as I want, right? So there's a one-to-many relationship. One event can raise multiple methods, right? So again, not a new idea. That's why they use plus equals. And what that is called, like when a programming language is capable of doing that, it means that programming language has multicast delegates. All right. So hopefully you guys won't be caught out by that one at the end of chapter 5. And with that, we are done with events. We're done with visual inheritance. So the next thing, quite interesting, I think, a little weird. There's one question in here that, wow, I am so glad I'm not the one who has to remember it. I'll point it out to you. It's not difficult. It's just it's finicky. You will have to remember. Yeah, we'll explore that when we get to it. Okay, so Windows forms, there's two types of Windows forms in the world. Okay. Multiple documents interface Windows forms and single documents interface. Okay, so MDI applications and SDI applications. The distinction is quite simple. Okay, it's quite a simple idea to grasp. The fact that these had to be so radically different, or they're not radically different in how you implement them. We'll create one on ourselves now, but yeah, we'll see. So SDI is the default. So what I mean by that is this application that we've created here, we kind of created it in a way. It was just Visual Studio doing it for us. But this application here, this is an SDI, a single document interface. Why is it SDI? So SDI applications have one window per toolbar, okay, or per menu, one window per menu. Okay. If you have other menus or like other windows, then the operating system itself, so Windows 10 or Windows 7 or whatever you're on, will manage it for you. Okay. So we'll manage those other windows for you. So if I click Start here, you can see I've got one document open, like one app open for this window. There's no way I can get another datetime picker without opening up another window. Right? Makes sense. And I could show you. I think I can actually spawn multiple windows if I wanted to. But actually, let's not go down that rabbit hole. You can see it with other apps as well, right? Like if you open up two Windows Explorers, right? If you open up two Windows Explorers, or two file explorers, they'll be separate windows, right? You can't have two windows in one. When we contrast this with what a MDI is, it'll make more sense, hopefully. The windows are managed by the operating system in an SDI, okay? Because when you open up another window, it literally opens up like a new window at the bottom here, and you would have to select through that new window. Okay. The counter to that is an MDI. Okay, so if we set a certain flag, which we'll see later, so it's just a Boolean variable, true or false. If we set it to true, then it will be able to, then it will be an MDI, and an MDI, multiple document interface. All that means is that the app itself is capable of doing window management. The app itself is capable of having like spawning child windows and tabs. Okay, so for example, Chrome, Google Chrome, this is an MDI application, right? Because it can have tabs, right? So these tabs are child interfaces. There's the broader window, like the document window of Google Chrome, and then there's all the tabs that you have open, right? And most applications like Excel and all of these are MDIs. Some super simple applications like calculator, like this calculator, this is an SDI. Right? Because there's no way for me to open up another calculator window, right? If I want to open up another calculator window, I have to open the calculator app again. Okay, so the operating system is doing the window management for this app rather than the app doing it itself. Okay, so hopefully you guys get the difference between like MDI and SDI. So we've just got like an SDI has one window per toolbar, and an MDI manages its own windows and its own sort of tabs. Okay, all right. So that's that. That's the primary difference. Actually creating an MDI, there's some technical little things that we're just going to explore. Okay, and that will be the last bit for this, I think, and then we'll go on to console-based applications. So what we're going to do is just make our app an MDI. Okay, we're going to make an MDI application, and you guys will see it's not too difficult. And yeah, there's some important things that I'll point out, some weird questions that can be asked. So I'll say add, yeah, I'm just going to add a new form here. New item, it'll be a standard Windows form. So I'm just going to add it, form3.cs. Okay, we've got form 3. Notice this wasn't inherited. So it has this default big size, and it's going to need this big size because it's going to be holding a lot of smaller windows in it. Okay, so what we're going to do is make form 3 hold a bunch of form 2s inside it. Okay, so we're going to be able to create form 2s inside form 3. So form 3 is going to be an MDI application because it's going to be able to manage its own windows. Okay, and yeah, it's not actually too difficult to do. There's just some, yeah, you just have to do a couple of things. So the first thing you have to do is tell Visual Studio, or tell C# rather, that form 3 is an MDI container. Okay, so it is able to contain multiple interfaces within it. Okay, and to do that, there's this flag here, appropriately named flag called isMDIContainer. It's a Boolean variable. It holds true or false, and I'm just going to tell it to hold true. Okay, this is now an MDI container. It can hold multiple child windows inside it. All right, so that's the first step. The next thing we need to do is actually create the functionality that allows it to create a new window, which is not too difficult to do. So we'll do this. Yeah, okay, we'll do it in this order. So I'm going to drag and drop so in order to manage a new window, let me just show you what we need to be creating here. So I'm going to open up like Word or something, like an example of an MDI application. We need to create like a toolbar that allows us to spawn new windows and, you know, control tabs. I don't know why I opened up Word. I don't even think this is a particularly easy thing to do in Word. Anyway, so we need to create actually a good example like this plus sign. You click the plus sign, it spawns a new document interface. You can drag them around. You can detach them into like their own window, that kind of thing. We need to create this toolbar that allows us to manage the windows. And how we're going to do that is we're going to drag and drop a toolbar onto our application. Okay, what these are called is menu strips. Once you see a menu strip, you'll recognize it from all of the Windows applications that you've used. Okay, there's a lot of options here. Menus and toolbars would probably be a good place to look. Yeah, menu strip. There we go. Okay, so we've got a menu strip. Okay, and this is like those file, save as, insert things like that's what a menu strip is. Okay, so here's our menu strip. And we're just going to say there's going to be like a window. One thing that's interesting here, it's quite a cool thing. So you can put, so you see I typed window here, and that'll just make it window. So that'll make the text window. Okay, fairly straightforward. And you'll be able to like mouse over window and it'll open up this drop down bar for you. Another cool thing that you can do is you can put an ampersand before things. Okay, you can put an ampersand. So I'm going to put an ampersand before window. Actually, okay, I'll do it on the next one. So I'm going to type window. Okay, so enter. You can see it's just formatted window like that, right? It's just formatted window. Fairly straightforward. We're going to create another drop down called new window. This time I'm going to put an ampersand in front of the N. Okay, so I'm going to say new window like that. So when you click that button, we're going to program it so it opens up a new window. So a new form 2 will be opened. Okay, new window. So I'm going to hit enter. So what's the difference, guys? What's the difference between window and new window, other than the text itself, obviously? What's the noticeable difference that I was pointing out? Where I put the ampersand. N is underlined. Do you guys know what it means when something is underlined in a window? Does anyone know what it means? What does it mean when a letter is underlined? You've probably seen it before. Like I can maybe show it to you up here. They don't do it in this one. It's quite useful when they do it, actually. Yeah, exactly. It's the shortcut. Okay, that's what it means. So that's the hotkey. When you push N, it'll activate new window. Okay, so that's activating a hotkey. Okay, so whatever letter you put the ampersand in front of will be the hotkey. Okay, whatever letter you put the ampersand in front of will be the hotkey. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to finish programming up a new window, and then we'll go into that the weird thing I was discussing earlier. Okay, cool. So, all right, this is the bit that I was saying I'm just going to do in the source code instead, because it's just a little bit easier to do it in the source code. We just have to change another just like another thing to tell it that this menu strip is what's listing all of these options. I'm just going to do it. Where would it be? Initialize components, I'm thinking. Yeah, this seems promising. Yeah, I'll do it over here. So I'm just going to set this property quickly. This dot menu strip one dot MDI. Ooh, NDU. Oh, MDI window list item equals window. Cool. So all I'm telling it is that I'll point out what this is doing now. So all I said was MDI window list item equals window toolstrip menu item. Okay, I'll point out what that was activating now. It's not something that I think you'll be asked. So cool. Now we just want to program what happens when you click new window, okay? And you guys know this already. If I double click it, it's going to jump me to the event, okay? If I double click it, it's going to jump me to the event. So I'm going to double click it, and it jumped me. So the events private new window toolstrip menu item underscore click. So when you click that button, this code is going to be run. In this code, I am going to create a new object of type form2, okay? I'm going to create a new object of type form2. I'm going to tell that new object that it is a child of form3, okay? And then we're just going to say show it, okay? So show that form2. So in order to create an object of type form2, that's not too difficult. You just say form2, we're going to give it a name. We'll call it child equals new form2, okay? So that created an object of type form2. You guys should be super used to that format by now, right? I hope so. It's very standard. So we created a new object called child of type form2. We set this attribute. Okay, so it's child.mdi parent. Okay. Now I want to set MDI parent to form3. Okay, I am working within form3, guys. How do I reference form3 from inside itself? what word do I use? What word am I going to type here? How do I tell it that I am your MDI parent? I form 3. And we're inside, yes, Adam, 100%. This. Okay, child.mdi parent equals this. So this, in this case, is form 3. Okay, form 3 is this, is child's parent. Okay, and we'll see what that means now. And then we're just going to say child.show so that it actually shows up. Okay, so it actually displays. It must render to the screen. Okay, and those are the 3 steps. I now need to go over to program.cs, and instead of opening up a form 2, I need to open up a form 3. Okay, we need to run form 3. So now when I click start, it's going to run form 3. It's not going to run form 2. So I now hit start, and you can see we'll get our large form 3 come up here eventually when it's finished building. So here's form 3. I can now click window, new window, and you can see it opened up a window. It opened up a form 2. If I hit new window again, it opened up a form 2. If I hit new window again, it opened up a form 2. If I hit a new window again, it opened up a form 2, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So the thing, so that little property I set, this dot menu list item or MDI list item, all that's saying is so that it's listed here. So you can see I've got 1 derived form, 2 derived form, 3 derived form, 4 derived form. So that's all of our list. That's all of our form 2s that are open here. Okay. So that list was only created because I set that property. Okay, let me just remind you in case someone forgot. So here I set this dot, where did I set it? Is it complicated to make them snap to? We'll do that next, Adam. That was that annoying little thing that I was telling you, that I was warning you guys about. It's a very annoying thing, but it is, yes, it is doable. It's just maybe a little bit difficult to remember. Let me just, I need to find this now. Where did I set it? This dot menu strip 1 dot m, there it is. Okay, so this dot menu strip 1 MDI window list item. So the list of windows, okay, the list of windows is going to be displayed under window tool strip menu item. Okay, so that is the menu item that displays the list of windows. Okay, so that's all this was setting. Okay, so yeah, that was just reminding you guys of that. Cool. And now, as to Adam's last question, that is in fact the last part of what we need to discuss about Windows forms, is how do we arrange those forms in a neater way? Because you could see I was like dragging them around, which is not great. So you can organize them in a more formal way, and you use something called the MDI layout to do it. Okay, so we're going to have to add 3 buttons here. We're going to add them underneath like an arrange. Okay, so I'm going to say arrange. If we wanted the hotkey for arrange to be A, then we could put a little ampersand before A, and you'll see that it'll underline arrange. You see it underline the A. Okay, so under arrange, we're going to have 3 options because there are 3 options of how you can arrange the windows that you create. Okay, there are 3 options. So the 3 options are cascade. You can cascade them. You can have them arranged vertically, so vertical, or you can have them arranged horizontally, so horizontal. Okay, those are your 3 options. So now you've got those 3 options there, and we just need to implement the code. Like when you click cascade, they must arrange in a cascade format. When you click vertical, they must arrange in a vertical format. When you click horizontal, they must arrange in a horizontal format. How do we implement the events? We simply double click. So I'm going to double click cascade, and it's going to open up it's going to create the event for me automatically. And the reason why I'm doing it in that double click way is because it is actually quite a lot of code. Well, it's not a lot of code. You just have to add this line into the source code. Okay, so all it did was automatically add that line for me, and it added the method back in form3.cs. So it added this method, and it added that line. Okay, it's something that we could do ourselves, but double clicking is easier. Okay, and then we're going to add the vertical events. I'm just going to do it all at once and then implement them. And we're going to add the horizontal events. Okay, so we've got our 3 events there for vertical, cascading, and horizontal organizational arrangements of all of our MDI windows. Okay, and actually it's just 1 line of code, but it is very annoying, and you must I'll show you why it's annoying, because the reason it's annoying is because you're asked this in a multiple choice context. Okay, so I'll say layout, how I'm going to arrange them in a cascade. We'll say layout MDI, okay, MDI layout dot cascade. Now, when you guys are asked this, I honestly laughed when I saw this question. When they ask you this in the test, they'll give you these two options. They'll say, is it layout MDI layout dot cascade, or is it MDI layout MDI dot cascade? Okay. That will be those will be your two choices. Okay, when they say how do we give it a cascading arrangement, those are that'll be like option A and B, and then like C and D would be like two other tricks. Okay, you need to remember, guys, I'm telling you now, you need to remember that it's layout MDI layout. Okay, I know it's ridiculous. So when I saw this question, I just laughed. But yeah, anyway. And then it's layout, MDI layout. So this is how do we arrange things vertically. If we want to arrange things vertically, we say dot tile vertical, okay, dot tile vertical. And if we need to arrange things horizontally, quite predictably, it'll be layout, MDI layout dot tile horizontal. Okay, and that'll be that. So now when I run form 3 again, so I'm going to click start, and it's going to open up form 3. I can say array. I'll need to spawn a couple of windows, obviously. So I'm going to say new window, new window, new window. So I've got 4 windows here. Okay. Another thing to take note of, it's silly. I don't know why they defined it like, it seems silly to me. It might be okay for you. I don't know. So vertical, this is considered, okay, let me just, so actually I'm going to only use 3 because it might be easier to see what's going on. Okay, so this is considered a vertical arrangement. Okay, and this is considered a horizontal arrangement. Now, to me, that is not at all intuitive, but look, that is what they call it. So this is the vertical arrangement. Why? Because the windows are expanded vertically, I assume. Like, to me, they are horizontally next to each other, but that is just what they called it. Don't shout at me, I'm just the messenger. So we've got a vertical arrangement, a horizontal arrangement, and a cascading arrangement. So cascade means they're overlapping like that. Okay. So that's how we organize all of these. All right. Yeah. Does it make sense to you? Can someone tell me, does this make sense to you that they called this the horizontal arrangement? Is that what you would say intuitively? 0 cents. I agree. Like when I saw this, I was like, okay, I must have made a mistake because this is the vertical arrangement. But you can see vertical tool strip click, MDI layout dot tile vertical. This is just how they defined it. It makes no sense. That's the horizontal layout. This is the vertical layout. I thought this was like me making a mistake, but that's just how they named it. Okay. So yeah, Americans. Cool. Anyway, so that is it for MDI forms or Windows forms. The next thing we need to cover is console-based applications. I was going through what I need to teach you for console-based applications. And actually, so guys, what we've been doing on Rex Tester since the start of the course is basically console-based applications. Rex Tester is using a console-based application. So you basically know everything you need to know. There's 2 things I'll need to teach you about console-based applications, and that's we'll finally unravel this mystery. It has been, I mentioned it back in chapter 1. It's public static void main string args. What is this string args? You guys know it's an array of strings, and I told you that args stands for arguments, but what do we use this for? What is string args used for? So we'll finally answer that mysterious question, and then we'll also discuss a little bit about how we work with files. So like, how do you open a text file and read from the text file and stuff like that? It's pretty simple, really. But those are the two things we'll discuss about console-based applications. The rest of it you already know. And then we need to discuss Windows services, and then we're done with chapter 5. So we'll probably finish next week. But for now, I know it's a little bit early, but I don't want to start covering console-based applications when we only have 5 minutes left. So we're going to call it there. Okay. So thank you guys for coming. And yeah, see you next week. Enjoy your weekends.
So have a good weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, you too. Yeah, thank you guys. Enjoy your weekends. See you next week. Probably. Yep, thank you guys. Cheers, cheers.